So, as you all know, the Phoenix Suns have been swept by the Timberwolves, and it was an ugly series, by all means. I mean, they went all in this offseason to win a championship, and they didn't even come close. I mean, for the majority of the season, they were struggling to get out of the play-in, and they really didn't get out of it until the last couple games of the season. And then they're matched up against a Timberwolves team that made a massive leap this season after everyone pretty much wrote them off last year. And then they come into the series and obliterate this Phoenix Suns team that, going into this year, a lot of people thought were going to win a championship. And when you look back at it, it kind of looks clear that they didn't really stand a chance. But before we get any further into it, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And I know I haven't posted in like 5 months, but from here on out, I'll try and be more consistent. And with that out of the way, let's get further into the video. Anyways, let's just start off this video by talking about how the Suns played in the series. And I mean, let's be real here. They played horrible. No one really played good outside of Booker in Game 4. And a lot of people are going to say he played good in the whole series. He was the only reason they were alive. And I mean, for Game 4, absolutely. But in Games 1, 2, and 3, Booker really didn't play that good. I mean, and they just got blown out in Games 1, 2, and 3. It was about 20 points in each of those games. And in Game 4, they kept it pretty close. But where was that in the first 3 games of the series? And this was supposed to be an offensive team that no one could guard. But they got completely locked up by Jaden McDaniels. And in the first 3 games, you only scored over 100 points once in Game 3. And that was still a blowout. And you're paying 3 guys about $150 million per year. You don't got any more money to sign any other good players, really. I mean, and at this point, I don't know if anyone is going to want to sign with the Phoenix Suns. And I mean, listen, hate on Chris Paul all you want. You can call him a choker, you can call him washed, but Phoenix really needed him this season. I mean, you got Booker running the point. That's just not going to work. Booker is not a point guard. He's a really good guard, but he's not a point guard. He's a shooting guard. He's a great scorer and a good ball handler, but he's really not going to be the main facilitator on a championship contender. And I mean, sure, the last 2 years before this season, they got blown out in elimination games in the second round. But that's still a lot better than getting swept in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, I could go on about this for hours pretty much, but let's just talk about the future, because I think that's a way more important talk right now. And there's no better way to start off about this than mentioning they don't control any of their first round picks until 2031. Which is going to be 7 years from now. And that pretty much guarantees they're not going to be able to do a rebuild. They're not going to be able to really draft a ton of studs, unless if maybe they hit on like a 25th overall pick, which it's probably not going to happen if we're being realistic here. So you pretty much have to contend until 2031, which they're not going to do. They're not even contending now. Let's be honest. I mean, you're paying Bradley Beal $50 million a year with a no-trade clause, and that pretty much means you're never going to be able to enter a rebuild. I mean, what team is going to want a contract like that? Like, maybe the Pistons, 2 years ago, but at this point, they're not going to want that contract. The Wizards aren't going to want him back. The Spurs don't want a player like that. The Blazers definitely don't want a player like that. They already got way too many guards, which I could probably talk about in another video. So any team that you would realistically dump his contract to isn't going to want him. And even if they traded for him, Bradley Beal can just say, no, I want to stay here. I don't want to be traded. And you're stuck with him. I mean, you're stuck with him for the next 3 years on that horrible contract. And by the end of that contract, he's definitely going to be on the bench somewhere. And to be honest, it's not just his contract. It's Booker's and KD's contract too. You're paying all those 3 guys somewhere around $150 million. And a lot of you have probably seen this graphic that I'm about to put up that just shows how horrible their contracts are. I mean, KD's only for 2 years, so it's not too bad. And Booker's might be worth it, but Beal's is just horrible. It's just horrible. And you're not going to be able to sign any free agents. And don't forget Grayson Allen's contract, too. It's going to kick in, I think, next season, maybe. So you're only going to be able to sign players for minimum contracts, and there's not a lot of guys who are going to want those contracts. They're just going to sign to another contender that has enough money to sign them. Like Orlando next year, I think they could probably sign a few good free agents next year. So free agents are just going to want to go to teams like that can hand out that money, and teams that are, quite frankly, way better than the Phoenix Suns right now. And the West is only getting better, to be honest. There's a lot of young teams who are ready to take that leap, and there's still a lot of teams that are contenders right now, and they're going to stay contenders for maybe the next 5 years or so, like the Denver Nuggets. So I wouldn't be surprised if they lost in the play-in next year, or even missed the play-in entirely. I mean, KD is probably going to take a decline next season. Beal's going to take a decline next season. And Booker is in his prime right now. And his prime's only probably going to last for 3, 4, maybe 5 years longer before he starts to decline too. So that leaves them in pretty much a state of just awfulness, pretty much. I mean, it's very similar to the 2010 Nets. But I don't know if Phoenix is going to finish 12-70 sometime in the next 4 seasons. I mean, I think Booker will probably lead them to maybe at least 30 to 40 wins per season, even if like the team around him is just atrocious. But I mean, he could be open to request a trade as well, I think. I mean, their future is awful, and I mean, he's in his prime, so he's going to want to go to a team that can contend. And the Phoenix Suns are just not a contender. They won't be for the next few seasons. Anyways, that's all I have to say. This was Sports Lore. Hopefully you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. And hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. See you next time.